you face as a person of color pursuing higher education? How did you overcome them?
Can you say that again?
What obstacles did you face as a person of color pursuing higher education? And how did you overcome them?
Good question. I don't know if I can answer that one because
It's gonna take like our whole lives, I think. Let me give you some research.
yeah, it's a. I identify as Vietnamese, so when I was going through college, you know, very much so, I've always hung out with people who are Vietnamese or Asian, you know, Khmer, Laos, Chinese, everything like that. You know, I just had that specific group of Southeast Asian friends that I would always hang out with, and I hope this is relevant to the question because I didn't really. From my position and everything like that, I was such inside that little bubble that I really didn't have time to really care about what people outside that bubble were thinking or challenging me for in education or anything like that. I would simply just go to school, do my own thing, hang out with my friends, party on the weekend, go to school, procrastinate sometimes, and really not think about any challenges that I really didn't recognize that were thrown on me, but it kind of just going with the flow of it and handling it. Just once it's done, it's done. Is that relevant?
Oh.
Sorry.
No, that's right. So I never think that like there's anything explicit about being a person of color. Like in the challenges stuff, like nobody's ever kind of said, you know, Filipino, go do something else. Why don't you go be a nurse? Like nobody said that like as an insult to me, which is good, right? Even though people could. I think just going into academia, and especially not going into a part of academia where the field is still predominantly white and it's still predominantly male, right? So those are two things that are true. And I think the main challenge wasn't so much getting into grad school, but the main challenge I think now, even just like networking in the field, is that so political science is still heavily dominated by white men, and I don't care about baseball, so baseball ended yesterday, right, with like Cubs winning the World Series, and like that's a main thing that white professors and stuff talk about, and this is just informal conversation that you make about baseball and whatever other hobbies people have is kind of a big way that people kind of connect and network and whatnot. So I think the main challenge, if you're doing kind of academia and maybe other types of jobs too, where the people in charge are still very much white and whatnot, and have very different interests maybe than what you have, is not having kind of that familiarity or kind of that same interest in things that the people in power do, right? It's not going to give you that kind of easy way to kind of have a conversation with them and kind of connect with them on that personal level, so they feel kind of more inclined to help you, as a friend and not just kind of as a student or advisee, right? So I think that's kind of the main challenge of being somebody who's not white in a white-dominated field, right? Is having kind of that cultural knowledge or kind of cultural exchange with people, right? Because if you look at the political science department here, I mean, there's one Filipino professor, so we've had Professor Manola, she's Filipino, and she's the only other one, right? And this is very much true for a lot of different academic fields. It's, when I was at UCSD, there was one Filipino professor, and I was kind of thinking about grad school, and I was asking her about it, and she said, well, yeah, it was kind of weird being, going on these interviews, and the Filipino woman, this is her talking, and you have old white guys who are like, well, you're Filipino, why do you study Latino politics, and why do you want to do political science at all, right? So you face those types of barriers too, where people are like, you're not really doing kind of what you're supposed to be doing, right? If you do politics, if you're Filipino, maybe you should be studying Asian American politics, and if you're Latino, whatever, you should be studying Latin American politics and stuff. So it pops up in small ways like that, and it's not any kind of like explicit challenge, but it's just kind of coming to terms with, okay, I'm starting at this deficit, right? Like I can't walk into your professor's office because I don't care about baseball. You may care about baseball, but for example, in our department, a lot of professors care about baseball, right? And if I want to have that kind of like casual conversation with them, that eventually, where if they're at home watching baseball and they think, oh, there's a great opportunity, I should send it to Tim, like that's not going to be something that I can do kind of on my own, right? So you have to figure out other ways of kind of engaging with and interacting with people that it's going to help bridge that divide between you and them. And that's, I guess, unfair in some ways, right? And it's like, well, why do I have to do this, right? Like, all these white professors should, I don't know, come eat lechon or whatever at like a party, right, instead. But they're the ones that are in charge, they're the ones that have kind of, the ones that have the power in the situation, so, and it's kind of in your interest to kind of do that. So that's kind of the main challenge, is kind of really force myself to get over that, and however unfair I might feel it is, and just say that I have to figure out a different way to do this. I have to figure out kind of what, you know, I can do to kind of bridge that divide, right? And it helps to have kind of other people around who, maybe they're not Filipino, but other people of color, where you can kind of discuss, you know, all the various microaggressions that might pop up in the day, and just like validate that for like that evening, and then go about your business the next day, right? So you're not going crazy. Like, there are stuff that's happening kind of behind the scenes. It's not necessarily aggressive and purposely like derogatory or anything, but it is nice to kind of have that outlet. So, you know, whatever field you're in, you know, whatever various parts of education you're in, if you could find people that are like, yes, that person's being ridiculous to you, and it is because, you know, you're Filipino, a woman, or whatever, right? Just having that kind of makes this a lot easier. Because if I didn't have kind of that support system in the department here, and like the other people in my cohort, and then this whole experience would have been a lot more challenging. So just find a good support system and get that out and go about the rest of your day.
I don't know if I know if I've hit any obstacles. I know sometimes I have self-doubt because I don't know if I'm in this position because I'm Filipino, or if I got that scholarship because I'm Filipino and I'm just trying to reach some sort of quota. It's definitely hard. I teach in a school that is all white, as far as teachers go. The principal is white, the teachers are white. But the school that I teach at was ranked the 5th most diverse school in the nation. So I'm looking at brown faces, and they're being taught by white people, and the curriculum is written by white people. And so it's hard to teach even just real Black history and real Native American history, and not even have our history in the textbooks. So those challenges I face every day.
So I'm thinking of undergrad, and the primary things that really impacted my experience, definitely one, being Pinay, being Filipina, being a woman, being the eldest daughter in my family. There were a lot of expectations that my parents held of me that they didn't hold of my younger brothers. And they're not that much younger than me. They're like 2 and 3 years younger than me. So me going off to college, they still expected a lot of me. I still went home every weekend, my first, second, third, fourth years. Throughout all of college, I still went home almost every weekend to take care of the family, to take care of different responsibilities. So I think that impacted my experience a lot, and the ways in which I could engage. And of course, like, obviously you all have heard that I was still very involved on campus. That's not going to be everyone's experience, and I don't expect everyone to be able to balance everything that I went through and experienced the way that I did. I think the other thing that impacted me was being low income, having to work so many jobs to support myself and to support my family. That impacted my experience. That impacted, you know, I rarely went to class. I'm an awful student as well. Like, I hate going to class. I hate it. Even in grad school, like, I hated going to class. So being low income, needing to work, being the eldest daughter, a lot of that impacted things. In my sociology and in my communications classes, I found that I was often, usually the only woman of color in my class. And I didn't, like I said, because I rarely went to class, I couldn't really build community within my classrooms. So I had to find community elsewhere, and that's where a lot of the Philamories came in. That's where the SRC came in. And then I think in grad school, like Destiny's talking about, there's a lot of imposter syndrome, there's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of like, should I be here? Is this what I want to do? Did I deserve this? Did I really work towards this? Is this where I should be? You know, like, did I work hard enough for this? Or, you know, things like that. And I think the thing I loved about my program is how intentionally culturally relevant and intentionally diverse it was. In my cohort of 18, there was only 3 white people, and everyone else identified as a person of color. And there were queer folks in my class. Like there was a lot of diversity in my cohort, which was awesome because we all got to share our experiences with each other and talk to each other and just find community with each other. At the same time, there were only 2 other people in my cohort who identified as Filipino, and they had more salient identities as far as like being Christian or being queer that were more important to them than being Filipino. So I often felt like in my classes and in my cohort that I was educating my peers on the Filipino issues in education, which was really hard for me because it just got really exhausting, emotionally exhausting. But those are a couple of things I'm thinking about, like my undergrad experience, my grad school experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, that just brings to mind too that, so just being kind of a minority faculty member or whatever in academia and stuff, is that you'll face kind of a lot of pressure from other members of your community to be kind of a representative of that community, right? And like that's a fair kind of assumption, but there's no kind of obligation like one way or the other of like what like you need to do, right? And it's kind of a difficult balance for people who I've talked to kind of in other programs and stuff to kind of balance out like, you know, I really identify as African American and I, you know, really care about the community and stuff, but I don't, for them it wasn't about, their primary goal wasn't about being an ambassador for kind of the African American community in academia, right? It's like I'm a researcher first and like that's another part of your identity. So you'll encounter people who, you know, might, you know, give you a lot of side eye for not being kind of like the best kind of ambassador or best kind of the version of being Filipino American or whatever, you know, that you're supposed to be and stuff. So all of this is to say is that there's probably going to be people that you can't really please, so you just need to go out and figure out what works best for you. And you know, there's no kind of easy way to that aside from just you have to go out and test things out, right? So don't, you know, there's pressure to represent kind of your community, whichever kind of identity you place first, but it's not kind of an imperative. You don't have to, and you shouldn't let people guilt you into kind of doing things or identifying in ways that you don't want to.
We're actually going to take a